On a warm summer night in 1912, the small town of Villisca, Iowa, drifted into an eerie silence. But as darkness deepened, something unspeakable stirred within the walls of the Moore family's home. Between the late hours of June 9th and the early morning of June 10th, a nightmare unfolded, a nightmare from which no one would awaken. The Moore family, known for their warmth and affluence, had gone to bed peacefully. Josiah Moore, his wife Sarah, and their 4 children, Herman, Mary Catherine, Arthur, and little Paul, lay asleep in their comfortable beds, unaware of the evil that lurked in the shadows. That evening, Mary Catherine had invited 2 friends, Lena and Ina Stillinger, to stay over, filling the house with the laughter of children. But soon, the laughter would be replaced by silence, broken only by the sound of death. When the morning sun rose over Villisca on June 10th, it cast its light on a scene of unimaginable horror. All 8 souls within the Moore house, 6 children, 2 adults, had been brutally bludgeoned as they slept, the blows delivered by the blunt end of an axe. Blood stained the walls, and a heavy stillness filled the air, as if time itself had stopped in the presence of such overwhelming tragedy. The once cheerful home had become a tomb, and the town of Villisca would never be the same. Despite a lengthy investigation, no one would ever be convicted of the crime. Suspects were questioned. One was even tried twice, once ending in a hung jury, and the second an acquittal. The mystery of who entered the Moore residence that fateful night, armed with an axe and sinister intent, remains unsolved. The motive, like the murderer, vanished into the shadows. To this day, whispers echo through the town of Villisca. Some say, when night falls, you can still hear faint footsteps creeping through the darkness near the old Moore house. Others claim the spirits of the victims linger there, restless, forever bound to the site of their untimely demise, waiting for justice that may never come. The memory of that night, steeped in blood and sorrow, haunts the town like a ghost that refuses to be forgotten. That evening seemed so ordinary, filled with laughter and song. The Moore family, along with young Ina and Lena Stillinger, attended the Children's Day program at the Presbyterian Church. Sarah Moore had coordinated the event, and the children, including her own, performed cheerful speeches and songs. As the program ended at 9:30 p.m., the group walked the short 3 blocks home, the cool night air brushing against their skin. They reached the Moore house between 9:45 and 10 p.m., the lights inside flickering to life, unaware of the darkness creeping closer. But by morning, an eerie stillness blanketed the house. At 7 on June 10th, the Moore's neighbor, Mary Peckham, grew uneasy. The family had not stirred. No one had emerged to tend to the morning chores. Peckham approached the house and knocked on the door. Silence. She tried the handle, but the door was locked tight. Her growing sense of dread compelled her to let the Moore's chickens out before calling Josiah Moore's brother, Ross. Ross arrived quickly, his heart heavy with worry. Like Mary, he knocked and shouted for his brother and his family, but there was no answer from inside. With trembling hands, Ross unlocked the door with his spare key. The quiet was thick, suffocating as he stepped into the house, the air strangely cold despite the summer sun outside. Mary Peckham stayed on the porch as Ross ventured into the parlor, his eyes drawn to the guest bedroom door. What he saw inside chilled his blood. The bodies of young Ina and Lena Stillinger lay beneath blood-soaked sheets. A scream caught in Ross's throat as he fled outside, calling for Ed, the family's employee, who arrived soon after. Around 8:30 a.m., with shaking hands, Ross asked Ed to search the rest of the house. Moments later, Ed stumbled back outside, his face pale and his eyes wide with horror. "They're all dead," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Every one of them, murdered in their beds." The words sent a shiver down Ross's spine. Inside, the house was stained with the unimaginable. In every room, the bodies of the Moore family were found, lifeless, their heads brutally bludgeoned. The murder weapon, a bloodied axe, rested ominously against the south wall of the downstairs bedroom, as if waiting for the killer to return. The Moore house, once filled with life and laughter, had become a silent tomb, and the town of Villisca would never forget the horrors hidden behind its locked doors. Henry Hank Horton, Villisca's primary peace officer, arrived swiftly to the scene after Ross Moore's chilling discovery. As Horton stepped into the house, his search revealed the full scale of the horror within. The entire Moore family, along with the Stillinger sisters, had been brutally bludgeoned to death. The murder weapon, an axe that had once belonged to Josiah Moore, was found propped against the wall of the guest room, where the lifeless bodies of the two young girls lay. Soon after, Dr. J. Clark Cooper, the first physician to arrive at the grisly scene, was called in to assess the devastation. What he found would haunt him for the rest of his life. The level of brutality inflicted on the victims was unimaginable, so vicious, in fact, that their faces were left unrecognizable. The pillows beneath their heads were soaked in blood, their brains splattered across the bed, as if the killer had sought not just to end their lives, but to erase their very identities. Doctors estimated that the murders had taken place between midnight and 5 that morning. Each victim had been struck 20 to 30 times with the blunt end of the axe. Disturbingly, 2 spent cigarettes were found in the attic, suggesting that the killer, or killers, had waited there in the darkness, biding their time until the household fell asleep. Although later tours claim there were no cigarettes, this detail remains part of the unsettling legend. The attack began in the master bedroom, where Josiah and Sarah Moore slept. Josiah, it seemed, was the prime target, as he received more blows than anyone else. His face was so severely mutilated that his eyes were missing, and a deep gouge in the ceiling above his bed showed where the axe had swung wildly during the savage attack. Sarah was not spared the killer's wrath. While Josiah had been struck with the blunt end of the axe, Sarah endured the sharp blade. From there, the murderer moved through the house, bludgeoning Herman, Mary Catherine, Arthur, and Paul in their beds, each child's life extinguished in the same brutal manner. Once the children had been silenced, the murderer returned to the master bedroom to deliver even more blows to the elder Moores, knocking over a shoe that had filled with blood in the process. Finally, the killer descended to the guest room, where Ina and Lena Stillinger were sleeping. After ending their lives, the murderer took a 4-pound slab of bacon from the icebox and left it beside the axe, a strange, senseless act that only deepened the mystery. Investigators found untouched food and bloody water in the kitchen, as if the killer had washed their hands before ransacking the drawers of every bedroom. In a final bizarre twist, all of the mirrors and windows had been covered with items of clothing, as if the killer couldn't bear to see their reflection or the faces of their victims. Authorities believed that all of the victims had been asleep during the attack, except for Lena Stillinger. Her body had been found lying crosswise on the bed, a defensive wound on her arm suggesting she had woken and fought back. Adding to the disturbing scene, Lena's nightgown had been pushed up to her waist, and she was found without undergarments, leading investigators to speculate that the killer had assaulted or attempted to assault her. This theory was later debunked, though the question of why her body had been staged that way remains a grim puzzle. One of the most baffling aspects of the case was that all the doors were locked from the inside. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no pried open doors. Investigators soon suspected that the killer had not broken in at all, but had possessed a key to the house. Whether they were a stranger or someone the Moores knew, the murderer vanished without a trace, leaving behind only death, terror, and the lingering specter of unanswered questions. The Villisca Axe Murders remain one of the most chilling, unsolved cases in American history, and over the years, Several suspects have been proposed, each with unsettling details linking them to the crime. Reverend George Kelly. Reverend George Kelly, an English-born traveling minister, was in Villisca on the night of the murders. Kelly was known for his peculiar behavior and had a history of mental instability, including a breakdown during adolescence. His adult life was marred by accusations of voyeurism and inappropriate behavior toward women and girls. On June 9, 1912, Kelly attended the Children's Day services, which the Moore family also attended. He left town early the next morning, before the bodies were discovered. Kelly's fascination with the case grew, and he frequently wrote letters to the police and the families involved, offering disturbing details that he claimed to have witnessed or overheard. This behavior led authorities to question whether Kelly had been involved in the murders or if his mental illness was causing him to imagine events. In 1914, Kelly was arrested for sending obscene material through the mail and was confined to a mental institution. In 1917, Kelly was arrested for the Villisca murders and, after hours of interrogation, confessed to the crime, only to recant later. Despite the confession, Kelly was acquitted after 2 trials, but his strange behavior left a cloud of suspicion over him. Frank F. Jones. Frank Fernando Jones, a prominent Villisca resident and Iowa state senator, had a strained relationship with Josiah Moore. Moore had worked for Jones at his implement store, but left to start his own business, taking away a significant portion of Jones' customers, including a lucrative John Deere dealership. Rumors also circulated that Moore had an affair with Jones' daughter-in-law, although there was no evidence to support this claim. Some theories suggest that Jones may have hired a hitman to murder the Moore family, though no definitive proof has emerged to support his involvement. Gleason W. Mansfield. Another theory points to Gleason William Mansfield, a suspected serial killer. Mansfield was believed by some investigators, including Detective James Newton Wilkerson, to be responsible for several axe murders across the U.S. before and after the Villisca killings. Similarities between the Villisca case and other murders, such as the Colorado Springs and Paula crimes, raised the possibility that Mansfield was involved. Mansfield was arrested in connection with the Villisca murders in 1916, but payroll records provided an alibi, placing him in Illinois at the time of the killings. He was released due to a lack of evidence and later sued Wilkerson for wrongful accusation, winning a settlement. However, some continued to suspect that Mansfield was responsible for the murders, especially after a witness identified him as someone seen leaving Villisca the morning after the crime. Andrew Sawyer. As a drifter, Andrew Sawyer became a suspect simply due to his presence in the area. He was known to be obsessed with the Villisca murders and displayed strange behavior, such as sleeping fully clothed with an axe by his bed. Although he was questioned, there was no evidence to charge him, and he was eventually dismissed as a suspect. Henry Lee Moore. Henry Lee Moore, a convicted murderer, was also suspected of the Villisca killings. Several months after the Villisca crime, Moore was arrested for the axe murders of his own mother and grandmother. The similarities between the method of killing using an axe and bludgeoning victims in their sleep led investigators to consider whether he could have been responsible for multiple axe murders during that time, including Villisca. Though no direct evidence tied him to the case, Moore remains a possible suspect. Samuel R. Moyer. Josiah Moore's brother-in-law, Samuel Ronald Moyer, had reportedly threatened Josiah's life in the past, which led to some suspicion during the investigation. However, Moyer's alibi ultimately cleared him of involvement in the murders. Paul Mueller. In The Man from the Train, authors Bill James and Rachel McCarthy James proposed that the Villisca murders were part of a much larger killing spree carried out by Paul Mueller, a German immigrant and suspected serial killer. Mueller was the primary suspect in the 1897 axe murder of a family in West Brookfield, Massachusetts, but evaded capture. Over the next decade, numerous families were killed in a similar manner across the U.S., leading the Jameses to theorize that Mueller was responsible for at least 59 murders and 14 incidents, including the Villisca case. Mueller is believed to have selected families living near railroad tracks, using axes found at the scene and killing his victims in their sleep. Like in Villisca, Mueller often covered mirrors and windows, and he would carefully clean the murder weapon before fleeing. This theory suggests that Mueller was a nomadic serial killer who remained undetected as he moved across the country, leaving behind a trail of brutal, unsolved murders. The Villisca Axe murders remain unsolved, with no conclusive evidence pointing to any one suspect. Theories range from personal vendettas to the work of a traveling serial killer, but the true identity of the murderer is still unknown, leaving this case as one of America's most enduring mysteries. The Villisca Axe Murder House, infamous for the 1912 unsolved killings of 8 people, has become synonymous with paranormal activity. Since the Moore family's tragic deaths, several families have moved into the home, but none have stayed for long. The house's dark, oppressive atmosphere and frequent reports of eerie occurrences have driven most residents away. Strange noises, shadowy apparitions, and an overwhelming sense of dread seem to linger within its walls, as if the house itself is a haunting reminder of the brutal crime that occurred there. In 1994, the house was nearly demolished, but local resident Martha Lynn stepped in to save it. Recognizing the historical importance of the property, she purchased the house and restored it to its 1912 appearance. By stripping away the modern plumbing and adding decor appropriate to the era, Lynn recreated the unsettling atmosphere of the night the murders took place. What began as a preservation effort quickly evolved into a notorious destination for history buffs and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Today, the Villisca Axe Murder House attracts visitors from all over the world, captivated by the gruesome past and legends surrounding it. The attic, where the killer allegedly hid while waiting for the Moore family and their guests to fall asleep, is particularly disturbing. Many visitors report a heavy, suffocating presence in the space, describing it as overwhelmingly dark. The eerie stillness and frequent reports of paranormal activity, such as disembodied voices, footsteps, and mysterious movements, have solidified its reputation as one of the most haunted locations in America. Paranormal investigators have captured electronic voice phenomena, EVP, and detected cold spots believed to signal spiritual presences. Apparitions and shadowy figures have also been seen, and some guests report feeling physical sensations, like being touched, or overwhelming emotions such as dread or sadness. One of the most unsettling events occurred in 2014, when a man investigating the house suffered a self-inflicted stab wound that he did not remember inflicting after trying to provoke the spirits. He later returned to the house to apologize for his actions, believing the spirits had reacted to his behavior. It is also said that paranormal activity peaks around 2 a.m, when a train passes through Villisca, with ghostly fog-like manifestations moving through the house, possibly mimicking the sequence of the murders. This phenomenon only deepens the house's mystique, drawing even more curious visitors. Overnight stays are offered for those brave enough to explore its dark history firsthand, and the house continues to be a major destination for true crime fans and paranormal investigators alike. The lingering echoes of the past and the stories of strange encounters ensure that the Villisca Axe Murder House remains a place of intrigue and fear for years to come. The Villisca Axe Murders, a crime shrouded in mystery and blood, have left a haunting legacy that extends far beyond the boundaries of the small Iowa town. Over the years, the story has captivated the imaginations of those drawn to the macabre, becoming a chilling subject for countless paranormal investigations and horror stories. In an eerie episode titled Villisca Axe Murder House, the Ghost Adventures team ventured into the house where the brutal killings took place, seeking to communicate with the spirits still said to haunt its rooms. The Scariest Places on Earth crew also braved the darkness of the home, hosting a paranormal investigation, their cameras capturing unexplained phenomena and the oppressive atmosphere that lingers within its walls. Hollywood took notice of the unsettling tale as well. The Axe Murders of Villisca, 2016, reimagined the terrifying events, transforming the real-life horrors into a haunted house film that chilled audiences with its depiction of restless spirits and unsolved murder. The house has drawn countless paranormal investigators, YouTubers, and curious souls hoping to witness the inexplicable. BuzzFeed Unsolved's Ryan Bergera and Shane Madej spent a night in the house in Season 7, Episode 2, hoping to find answers within the darkness. Similarly, popular YouTubers like Bailey Sarian, Sam and Colby, Amy's Crypt, and others have chronicled their chilling experiences, each leaving the house with more questions than answers. The infamous case has been discussed in the Stuff You Should Know podcast and continues to draw the attention of those who seek to understand the unexplainable. The Old Murr residence, steeped in tragedy, has become a place where the past refuses to stay buried, a house frozen in time, haunted by the lingering whispers of the dead. If you found this story haunting, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more eerie stories. Until next time, stay haunted, and thanks for watching.